So good evening, everyone. I'm happy to see half of the participants of the Romanian summer school in positive psychotherapy are already here with us this evening. And we have the opportunity to have our guest, Hamid Peseschkian, Dr. Hamid Peseschkian, who is the president of World Association of Positive Psychotherapy, with us this evening. And also in background, there are other two guests, dear friends of us, Professor Eric Messias, who is going to be soon with us from University of Arkansas from United States, and also Dr. Solomon Abebe from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Hamid, thank you very much for accepting to be with us this evening. We started in 6th of June, the 13th edition of summer school, the first online edition. And we have workshops each Friday with our teachers, Dr. Arno Remers, Professor Schlütermüller from Germany, and Cristian Petrescu is a colleague of us from Iași, from here, from Romania. And between Fridays, workshops on Friday, we also have special guests like you. Last week, we met Navid Peseschkian, and it was a very nice meeting with him. So thank you very much for accepting to be with us this evening. And we are happy to see you and to listen to you.
So thank you much for the invitation. So I'm like the advertisement program, like in the television, so that you don't stop the program between that is some advertisement until Friday. Yeah, really thank you very much for the invitation. It's such a pity that we cannot meet personally because at least for me, it's different. If I meet someone, I can touch the person and see the person and so on. But nevertheless, thanks to Zoom, we can meet online, and really thank you very much for the invitation. Then let me go to this now, huh? Gabi, do you see now only the picture, or do you see me also? Gabi?
I see the PowerPoint and you too.
Okay, because I see only the PowerPoint. Okay, but I don't need to see myself. Okay, yeah. Good. Okay. So, friends, I thought that we can discuss about a very interesting subject, the so-called psychovampires. And of course, some of you are from Transylvania, so actually you are the experts, but maybe I can share also some other ideas to that, and then we can discuss later a little bit about this. And so if we start with the motto, if you want something you have never had, you have to do something you have never done before. So the idea is, how can we have a self-determined life so that I'm not so much influenced by other people and my life is in my own hand? How can we do that? And something which might be very useful is that what we call energy management. You see, in the 1990s, we started with stress management. Then came the time for time management. And now we have gotten, they say, to the third generation of stress management, which is actually energy management. Energy management means everybody of us has the same amount of time, which is 168 hours per week. Nobody has more, nobody has less. So we have to see how we can manage this. And Gabi, I'm just getting a message that somehow this is not. So do you see the all these things or the
I see eight of your slides, not only one slide, but
and now
the same.
All of them?
Yeah.
That's a problem because sorry. So let me see.
Yeah, we are used with this kind of technology difficulties, Hamid.
Yeah. Now it's better.
No, yes, now it's okay.
You see only one.
Yeah,
Yes,
only one.
my dear wife helps me always.
Thank you,
Very much.
Catherine.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. So now it's only one, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So friends, I think this is something very important. In the past, we spoke a lot about stress management, time management, but now we have gotten to energy management. Because again, time, when a patient comes to us and he says, I don't have time, I don't have this, the time is the same for everybody. Yeah. Even now with COVID-19, you see, yeah, some people have even more time, but still they don't get along. So what we want to discuss today is one aspect of energy management, which I think is now what we call is the future of that. So the problem is people, it's not the lack of time, it's the lack of energy sometimes you have. Good. So I would like to discuss with you a few aspects about the psychovampires. We start with the phenomena and we get at the very end to test, am I maybe a psychovampire myself? A very important question. Each one of us maybe at least once a year should ask himself. Yeah, and maybe the others too. Okay. So psychovampire, of course we have male and female versions. You know this maybe. You are in a good mood, you are happy, you get up, you go to work, and then you meet one person, and just maybe 5 seconds you have to encounter, and after that you say, okay, maybe I'm going home. I mean, this whole day has no sense anymore. Or you have worked the whole day, you are tired, but you are satisfied and everything. You come home, and then within a few moments, again, some discussions, maybe with the partner, with the children, and then you see all your energy has gone, and then you are totally exhausted, and so on and so on. Then, so I'm sure I'm not the only one who is experiencing that. So the question is, what happens at that moment? And so for really more than 20, 25 years ago, then when I started to discuss this with clients, often the question came up with these psychovampires, like this person is taking my energy away. And so I became more aware of that. Maybe before we go deeper, dear friends, one aspect which is very important is you can have the best life management, the best wife, the best husband, the best everything. But sometimes one person in your life is enough to destroy your whole life. This can be your neighbor, the mother-in-law, your husband, your wife, your children, the boss, and your employee, your neighbor who is building. I mean, any person, but sometimes they have such an influence of us that you really, you want to leave everything then and so on then. Maybe even I think some people then decide to finish their life even because of that then. Yeah. And so therefore this is not now this is not only a subject which is interesting, it is a vital subject how to deal with that. And of course in life we have all of us challenges of relationships. At work we have the relationship challenges. We have you have children, you must be multitasking. You discuss with the children always the question about how to use technical thing or not, and you work and so on then. And then sometimes at work you have the feeling that you are like this gentleman Herbert and everybody else has wonderful suggestions how you should do. Everybody has an idea how you could do your job, and you are the one, who think I'm doing everything and nobody is helping me and so on there. Or at home, we have, all the challenges of relationships, education, divorce, separation, this and that. So it's really a challenge then how to deal with the different tasks, family, work, and this. So it is really more stressful. And now sometimes you feel really like that, yeah? And now in addition to that comes now the psychovampire and really takes all your energy away then, yeah? Because most of us are already at the limit every day, and now comes something in addition to that. So let's see what is behind that maybe. So this is just a list of some possible psychovampire types. You could now say there are 7 billion psychovampires in the world, theoretically, and so on. Then, but these are maybe the most common one. Just maybe briefly some of them, and then you can see, do you know some of them in your own life or maybe of your clients and so on. The yes but vampire is someone, for example, the person comes and tells you, you know, should I get maybe separated from my boyfriend or not? So you sit down, you think about this, you make some good suggestions, and then you think, now it's ready, we can close the thing. Yes, but, and then the discussion starts again. You have a young person, you want to help the young person, let me close the window, for example, to find the job. So you go, you find him, you write with him the resume and this and that, and then comes yes, but. So, and you see how this takes your energy away, and also you are not interested, of course, in doing anything more. The SOS vampire is someone who contacts you only if he or she has a problem. So you don't hear about the person, sometimes for years you don't hear that. And whenever the person calls, you know, now they have an emergency situation, then and you have to solve it now. I don't know, there can be small things like my car is broken, I need money, or I have this problem. But sometimes, but always they want you to do something immediately. So you leave everything, go and help this, for example, like a family member. Yeah, you have no contact at all. And whenever the person calls, we had here a patient here who said when his brother calls him always and says, "How are you?" he always asks first, "Why?" And then he says, because if I say I'm fine, I'm good, then a list comes with tasks I have to do. Therefore, when he says, "How are you?" I first ask why you wanted to know that. So this is like a SOS vampire. Muscle, I don't know if you know, this is an English term. This is this mask you give to dogs that they don't bite. Yeah, you know, they call it muscle. So the muscle vampire is someone who always talks and speaks and this and that, and you are only serving as energy food. So you are only serving as an observer. We have this sometimes in psychotherapy, where we say sometimes in Germany we say there's a term, the psychotherapist as a prostitute. The patient comes, pays, and does with you 1 hour what he wants, so to say then, yeah? So these are the people who talk and talk, and you see they have no interest in thinking about something, reflecting about something. They're not interested in your opinion. Also in private life you have this sometimes, yeah? You invite some guests over, the whole evening they tell all their problems, and maybe at the very end, so how are you? How is this? You know, so you see you are just serving as an observer, and nobody's interested in you really. And this takes a lot of energy away. Black is beautiful vampire, someone who sees everything negative, you know, black, negative, you know, the weather is bad, the government is bad, the politics are bad, this is bad. So there's always a reason, yeah, something is not, yeah. Especially the Germans, you have to say, they're also really specialists in that. There are some terms for that even, so that always you try to see these negative things actually, and so, and you're always hesitating, oh, something could happen and this and that. And then you see that maybe you got up in the morning with a positive view, positive emotions, but this negative attitude, you know, for example, if you ask them, how are you? Well, not so good. Okay. And then comes this, the whole story. And so you see that this really pulls you down. The expert vampire is someone who thinks that he or she is an expert. For example, let's say you have children, they have some normal problems, you know, I don't know, don't want to go to school, don't do the homework, play at the PlayStation, some things. And now everybody or this person is an expert in child education. You know, maybe has no children, is no teacher, but knows exactly what you should do. So, and these kind of experts, they come in our life. I have never invited them. They come in my life, suddenly they are expert, and then they leave. And then I sit there and then think, For example, he says, you know, I thought you as a psychotherapist, you're always patient, you are friendly, but now I see you are very hard, and so maybe it's not the right profession for you. You see, and then the person leaves, and then you are there, and then you think, what should I do? Yeah. It is never enough vampire. Someone, you know, you can. It's like a glass or so. You put something there, but because the bottom has a hole, whatever you do, encouragement, gifts, and this, it is never enough, and this takes a lot of energy away, because you see that. So whatever you do, you know, there are some people, you are one time in your life, you're nice to them, they will never forget that. 10 years later, they will say, you know, at that time I was in a difficult situation, you helped me. And these people give you even energy. But the other one, you put everything there every day, but it's never enough. And maybe the last one in this version is the conservation vampire, is someone, sorry, who, we have this in companies or in organizations. You want to change something, but they want more to conserve something. Yeah. So don't change something we have always done this as it is now, and so on. Then let me just close the window because the bell of the church is ringing. So no, it's better. So I don't know if I guess you have also some of the vampires also in your place, not only in our place. But there are maybe two others, just to have mentioned them. One, the new one is the smartphone vampire. We should not forget that. In many families, many relationships, I would now even say in all relationships and all families, this has become a major, major problem. And I think, especially as psychologists, psychotherapists, we have much more to engage ourselves into that. Because the smartphone is only a small technical thing, but this takes the whole energy away, the attention away. And in many families, this is the stress factor number one now. You know, this small box, yeah, you know, 10 times 4 centimeters is taking all the energy. So I think we should be very aware of that. And of course, even now, for example, COVID-19 can be a psychovampire because it takes really your energy away. Yeah, you are afraid, and so on and so on. Then you don't know where the vampire is. You can't catch it. You don't know how long will these things go on, and so on and so on. Then so it's in a situation which takes enormous energy away, and you can't do something at that moment. So this is typical for the vampire. So sometimes we have the feeling that we are surrounded by vampires wherever we are, actually. Then, yeah, you know, like, oh no, at home it's so, at work it's so, everywhere it's the same thing. Then, and so on. Then, I think that's also something. If you work with patients, you have to be careful. So if you see that the patient has the subjective feeling that, because it's always subjective, that he is surrounded by so many energy-sucking people, well, the next stage could be suicide. I mean, so we should not underestimate that. But that's the way you can assess this also. So how much energy do you have every day? And there are people who say, I have maybe 5% of my energy is left for me, and 90%, 95% goes to other people the whole time. Yeah, mother-in-law, the children, the husband, and this and that, and so on. So I think that's something we should be really very careful about. So how is the mechanism of that? Well, I've now, as I mentioned, worked for 25 years now with this psychovampire phenomena. And frankly speaking, I cannot tell you exactly the answer to that. But that's not the end of the lecture now today. But it is so that it's a very, very, it's like a mysterious thing. So someone comes in the room, doesn't say any word. Somebody comes here and say, okay, Hamid, don't worry. I will sit here in the corner and I will listen to your presentation. Immediately, I will start to, you know, to become confused, stumbling, and so on then. So how is it possible that someone, maybe just when we hear the name today at 10 o'clock, this person is coming, or you hear the name or the presence of the person is enough sometimes to take our energy away. So they push somehow a button and they have so much influence over me. And maybe a few things which might help us to explain this a little bit. Well, one is, I don't know how you call this cape in English or in Romanian. German is Tarnkappe, you know, is someone who puts this cap. You know this from stories. Yeah, they put the cap and then you cannot see the person anymore. Gabi, you know, huh? You know this. I don't know how you call it in.
Yeah. Do we know it?
You know it, huh?
It's a kind of camouflage.
I don't know, but it's, you know, it's some kind of this cape, and then you can't see them. Therefore, I put this soldier here, yeah. So that someone whom you cannot recognize. The psychovampire you cannot recognize at the beginning, and this makes it so dangerous because he's a normal person. Normal person. Sometimes it's a situation. We will discuss this later. So I think that's something very important. So first of all, to identify, we get later to that, my psychovampire. Therefore, I put this PV here like a stamp here on the forefront. So it's very important to know this person is for me this. Yeah, it's just for me personal. I don't need to tell it to someone, but that's very important because they usually are in disguise. So you don't see them, and this makes it so difficult. You think, hello, everything okay? And then he comes with a knife and so on then. But we discussed that. One thing which is very important, the psychovampire is the trigger. And it's not the cause of my problem. So like it's written here, the psychovampire is the trigger, but not the cause of an unsolved, subconscious, internal conflict which existed in me for a long time. So we could say it is like an old injury which you think it was okay, and now it bleeds again. You know, you push the arm, and suddenly then it's open again. Then, so so like it's the tip of the iceberg, but the conflict is then behind that. Then, I mean, just a very simple example. We just had recently a colleague, for example, who had always problems with a father who said, you know, the girls should be at home, they don't need to get an education and blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, she studied, she became a doctor and everything and that. And now 20 years later, she thinks the father's already, you know, very old and somewhere, and I don't meet him anymore and so on and so on. Now in the hospital, the chief doctor has the same thing, then says, okay, now again, a female doctor, why are you here? And maybe in surgery, we don't need women and this and that. So suddenly, as I said, an old injury breaks up again then. We will later get to that when we discuss the inner and the basic conflict then, yeah.
Hamid, I think Elena has a question. It is possible to ask something?
For Elena, one question, yeah.
Elena Philip. Okay, maybe later. She raised her hand.
Okay, later.
On mistake.
Good. So, as you know, we have two levels of relationships between human beings. One is the rational level, one is the emotional level. The psychovampire attacks us in 100% always on the emotional level. This is something very important to understand. You know, so the psychovampire comes with like typical sentences like, I thought you are a friend, but now I see maybe it's not like that. I thought you always have time for me, but maybe you have other people who need your help much more. We have this with clients sometimes, huh? Or it is not important that you don't have time for me. I know there are people who are much worse off than I am and so on then, yeah? Or for your work, you have always time, but for me and the children, you don't have time. These kind of things. So it's always on this emotional level, and this takes the energy away. We have this, for example, in human resources, people who on behalf of the company have to tell the employees that they are fired, because I'm now in this crisis also. And now you have to phone and discuss with every individual how his situation is and this and that. So the psychovampire attacks us always on the emotional level. And this makes, for example, well, I thought you are my brother, my sister, my cousin, whatever, but now I see you are not better than the other people, or this kind of things then, yeah? Something we have to bear in mind. So one of the first things which is very important is that the psychovampire attacks our self-esteem. And I think this also helps us to analyze why someone has so much power, and at the same time, to see what can we do as a prevention. I mean, this is because that's the whole thing, what we're discussing. You all know this concept about unconditional love and conditional love. Maybe I can just say in one sentence to summarize up. The concept of unconditional love means when you come on this, when you're born, the parents love you as you are. So they say, you know, we were exactly waiting for you. You know, you are exactly how we imagine our child. You look the same. You don't need to do anything. Just that you are here, it's wonderful. And you see maybe from your own faces how good it feels. You know, this is what we call really unconditional love, which theoretically first the mother and then the father show to someone. Well, this should be the ideal case, which is quite seldom, but anyhow, so in the unconditional love, the self-esteem develops from inside. Therefore, we have here the picture of the smaragd and rubin and diamonds. So so I feel, I learn, I am worth. So I have a self-worth. So there's a value. So for example, let's say my mother quit her job in order to stay with me at home. So I feel I am priority, for example. So this gives me the feeling I am worth to be loved. So this is something important. This, I think it's not more than in 10 or 20% of the families. I think about more than 80%, we don't have this, unfortunately. The other one is conditional love. Conditional love means we love you very much and everything, but if you are good in school, if you are nice, if you are polite and this and that, we like you a little bit more. And so the child from the very small age, usually in the kindergarten, especially it starts, you know, sees, aha, for example, when I get the good mark, the reaction of the parents is different. They make a special dinner, there is this, and I see they are very happy. We just had a client, she said, when she brought bad marks at home, her father for 4 or 5 weeks was not going to eat lunch at home. So the mother would cook every day, but the father would not come for lunch at home. So for 4, 5, 6 weeks, this daughter at that time was feeling, it is my mistake. I did the mistake. If I would have been a better pupil at school, my father would come at home and we would not have this conflict. So you understand, I mean, this is so conditional love means usually your self-esteem, your worth comes from achievement and from outside. If you look in the biographies of many sports people, yeah, you know, when they give interviews, you see, usually it's so that from the very small age, the parents connected achievement in sports with self-esteem and love. So this is conditional love. And so the child, of course, follows this. I hope this is a little bit understandable and so on then. And so that's one of the points where the psychovampire tries to attack us, unfortunately, then, yeah. And that's also a place, something we can do. I don't know if you know in English the term, or in Romanian, seesaw. I also had to check it up. Seesaw is this thing, you know, on a playground, you know, when you go up, down, and this and that. So you can say this is like a self-esteem seesaw, and the psychovampire puts you down, so to say, so that his self-esteem goes up. You know, like a Nazist, yeah? And you see this in politics nowadays, yeah? So you criticize everybody and then you for a short time, your self-esteem goes up, and then of course it goes down again. So again, you have to push down. So this is the thing why the psychovampire has to put you down, that his energy level goes up a little bit then, yeah? And of course, this is very difficult to react with these people. So what can I do? What can we do? Well, we have prepared something like an analysis of these psychovampires, and there are 4 or 5 questions. We will go through this together. The first question is, you have to ask yourself, maybe tonight or tomorrow, whatever, who are my psychovampires, or what situations are my psychovampires? You know, it can be also daily situations, yeah? I don't know, every day with their car in the traffic, or I don't know, this and that. But usually it's human beings. So who are presently my psychovampires? You will be very surprised what comes out of that. Yeah, So if you see, okay, what at this moment is taking my energy away. This was the good news. The bad news is, dear friends, that in 100%, the psychovampire is someone who is very close to me. So either it's for my family, or maybe neighbor, or work, and so on. So someone, you know, who is far away, and or who drives sometimes crazy, maybe I would say stupid person, but this person doesn't take my energy away. But the psychovampire is someone where every day I have the same issue. This is the thing then. So therefore you will be sometimes surprised whom you see on that list. But important is, please put the list somewhere that nobody finds it, yeah? We had recently a client wrote down his psychovampire list, and then his wife found the list, and then she found her name on that list. And then, of course, you have a lot of problems to explain what this is and so on. Then, so therefore, be a little bit careful with that. So first we think and we identify who are my psychovampires. This is totally subjective, and it's my right to decide for myself. I don't tell it to someone. This person takes my energy away. Good. The second thing is now, how does this person or these persons suck my energy away? How do they do that? What is the mechanism? On which button they always push in that? So how is it possible that this person has so much energy? Because the concept is that it's not always the fault of the person. So unconsciously, I give this person so much power over me. I hand the person, if you want here, I take the key and I give it to the person, say, here, that's my key of life. You have this power over me. So how is it possible, and so on. So let's go deeper in that. The first is, who are the psychovampires? We discussed that. Maybe a small thing, because I heard some of you are working also in the business field and so on. Then there is something interesting. Maybe you know this from Jack Welch. He was the former CEO of General Electrics, which in the 1990s was the largest company in the world. And so Jack Welch was like, I think they called him even the manager of the century. Yeah. So really everybody in America went through his management school. And one of his ideas was, you make 3 categories of employees, A, B, C. A is a wonderful employee. He does everything. You don't need to tell him anything. He does it and it's wonderful. B is a good employee. He does his things, but he needs more encouragement, some training, and so on and so on. And C should go to another company and becomes happy there. Okay. And then he said that about 20% of people are in category A, 70 in B, and 10 in C. Actually, this thing is nearly in all groups you will have. Family, working place, neighborhood, school, wherever. This 20, 70, 10 you have very often. The psychovampires are always in category C. It's clear, again, 10% of people take 90% of my life energy. It is always the same story then, yeah? So I think this is the first thing which helps sometimes to identify people, to see, okay, who is taking my energy away? Who in this group is this C person where I have to be very careful? In the lecture, in a meeting, in a group, in the family reunion, wherever and so on then. And then we have to work on this 10% and to see how do we either get rid of them or what can we do with them. Sorry. So one of the things, as I said, is that this psychovampire always works in disguise, so we don't see him actually then, yeah? But now comes the question, how does this psychovampire take the energy away? Without going too deep into that, usually the victim is someone who has usually either a lower self-esteem or someone who is very emotional, more empathic, tries to understand everybody, and so on and so on then. The perpetrator is usually more the narcissistic person, the more rational person, and so on then. So let's say, to bring a classical example, the husband comes home in the evening and the wife is very sad because today we had the problems with the children and is crying and this and that. And then she wants, of course, some support and so on. The husband is asking, well, is the dinner ready? So you bring it immediately on the rational level, so to say. And then the emotional person is suffering. Yeah, you see, the rational person is often not suffering so much because he or she doesn't understand what you are meaning. Yeah, so I see this every day at my work. So the one who is very rational really doesn't understand what you're speaking about. You're speaking in a foreign language, which is the language of emotions, doesn't understand this then. And of course, something which is, I don't want to go too deep, I'm sure you do this at the summer school, but very, very briefly for you. So the question is, when we have these three kind of conflicts, basic, actual, internal, what is a psychovampire doing? The basic conflict, as you know, is like my personality structure. And I can, maybe I had a difficult childhood, but it's okay. It does not mean that I am automatically sick, ill, or have a problem. The psychovampire is more like this actual conflict reactivates the basic conflict, which was sleeping, resting, and now suddenly it triggers the basic conflict, and then an internal conflict develops then. Therefore, the idea I have to get rid of my psychovampires at the beginning is not right, because that's the first idea. I fire this, I quit the job, I do this and that, but I fire the husband, I fire the wife, this and that, but then usually some years later, some months later, you find yourself in the same situation. We know this when we work with couples, that sometimes they get divorced and then they get married to a person which is exactly the same as before. Yeah. So I take this conflict with me. So I think that's very important. So before I do something, before we suggest to do something, I have first to understand what is this conflict, what is the trigger, what is the button this psychovampire pushes the whole time. Because, why? Because there are 7 billion other people running around who could push on the same button. So what is like what is a typical button? Typical button is you do something and they say, well, typical woman. They cannot drive a car, they cannot work, they should stay at home. Typical man has no emotions at all. Okay, for example, you take the child is crying. The man cannot deal with that, give it. They say typical foreigner, typical this, typical that, typical doctor, typical psychologist. They all have problems themselves. Therefore, they studied psychology and so on. So there are categories we put people in and they put us into them. And so the psychovampire pushes this button just, and therefore this person gets so much power because there is an internal conflict and this person reactivates a conflict which I thought maybe I had solved it already for a long time ago. Is this a little bit understandable? I hope so, yeah. If not, we can, at the discussion, we can see then how it is then, yeah. One thing which, when we now get to the question, how can we protect ourselves and what can we do? Well, one is we have to start with ourselves. The poor Socrates, thousands of years ago, said, why are you astonished that your travels have no benefit for you? You always take yourself with you. That's exactly what I said. So therefore, before we give someone a recommendation, a concrete suggestion to in my own life or someone else as a client, first we have to solve the conflict. If not, someone else will again push the same thing. When they say, for example, typical woman, typical man, typical psychologist, if I don't solve this issue, there will hundreds of other people will run around and push the same button and then will be the same reaction. So I will take my problems to the next relationship, to the next partnership, to the next working place, and so on and so on. Then. Okay, how can I reach immunity and protect myself? Okay. Now I want to show you 3-4 techniques which might be very useful. You all know this balanced model of positive psychotherapy, I guess. Gabi, they all know, I guess, huh?
Yeah, all of us, we know the balance
Very
model.
good. Okay. So this balance model actually you can use for stress management, for time management, and for energy management. In this case, it's a question, how did I have distributed my energy in these four things? For example, everything goes into achievement or so on and so on then. And from which of the four aspects do I get my self-esteem? This is very important. So usually when I put my energy in, I get my self-esteem. This means sorry, the more I am in a balance, the better I'm prepared to deal with attacks from a psychovampire. For example, if you put all your energy in achievement in your work, and now you're criticized at work, your boss, your colleague, someone criticizes you, of course, your whole self-esteem goes down. You put all the energy in the relationships, which is, for example, with the children and so on, or a husband and wife or so on. Now there are some problems at home. My whole self-esteem goes down again. I put everything in body, I become older, maybe I become sick, this and that. Again, the self-esteem comes down, or I put everything in the future and so, and then the future changes then, yeah? COVID-19 comes and changes immediately my whole future plans. So one idea of many ideas, but I'm not going deeper now, is how that by having a balance in all four aspects, my self-esteem, the sources of self-esteem are from different sources, like pillars, which are holding the self-esteem. So if one aspect is attacked, if something happens to me physically, to my work, my relationships, my future, meaning in life, still the rest can hold the self-esteem. I think this is something very important. And then the attack of the psychovampire is not so severe as if I'm one-sided. So if I'm one-sided, I can, maybe for years it's good, but then a small attack can be enough and everything breaks down. We have this every day at work when a patient comes who is only working. Everything for many years has been achievement for the company and this and that and so on. And now something has happened, the whole self-esteem comes down. Or we had a client who within 15 minutes after he got the message went out and killed himself then, yeah? From not with family, this and that, but so this is something important. The second aspect, what we can do is the change of perspective. And that's, we have to help our clients to understand that not the situation, but my perspective is important. COVID-19, at least in Western countries, is the same issue. Change of perspective. Well, one, you know that the change of perspective changes also our self-esteem. And very important is here the question, do I feel in charge of my life or not? So do I feel that, I'm strong and this and that, or what are other people doing with me? In English, it's not the exact term as we have in German. I don't know, maybe in Romanian you have better terms. So one we call remote control, the other self-determined. So one is like self-determined and the other would be like remote determined, yeah? I hope it's understood. In the bottom is the German term, if you want to look up. So the idea is, for example, here, two people are in the prison, and now see they paint two different pictures. So the question is, am I self-determined or is someone else doing something with me? And I personally think that all stressful situations come from it when we feel that I'm remote controlled. Small example, you have children and you tell them, okay, could you please go and bring the garbage outside? I don't want, and this and that. Okay, now let's say why remote control? Now you would say, who brings the garbage out is then allowed, I don't know, to watch television, for example. You can't even see as quickly as they go because it's self-determined. Today, now in the evening, you have this psychovampire lecture. I guess you're all self-determined. You decided to come. Nobody forced you to come, huh? I think so, yeah? So you're not forced by your employer or by someone else. Okay. And maybe you even it's evening, you like to be here and so on then. Imagine your boss sends you, you have to go tonight to a Zoom lecture. You feel remote controlled, and this adds to the stress. So I think one of the challenges every one of us has to see how can I get in each situation more self-determined, which is not easy. So in any situation, really, because then it's not the situation, but my perspective. We have this, but that's now another subject. We have this with this pandemic. Now again, in Western countries where the physical danger is not as much as in some other countries. But for example, some people feel totally remote controlled. My life is out of control. The government decides I have to stay at home and this and that. Therefore, demonstrations come up and many other things and so on. So other people say, okay, this is a situation. Now we try to do the best out of that. But by deciding so, I take the life in my own hand. And it's not the government or the virus which controls me. I am in control of my life. So this is, I think, always the challenge, which is not easy. But I think this is something which always leads to stress reduction. If I'm self-determined, maybe I have a lot of work, but I'm not stressed. So people often ask me, are you stressed? I say, no, I have a lot of work, but I'm not stressed. This, I think, is a big difference. This maybe we can do next time. Okay, next time. Good. There's a nice proverb which says, the art of living is up to 90% the ability to get along with people that you cannot, that you don't like, you cannot stand. You know, we cannot choose the people we have. So the question is, what can we do with them? And very concretely with the psychovampires, it's so that one is that you have to see some people, it's easier to hold in a group. Some people it's easier to be in a face-to-face contact. For example, if you have a lecture, now with Zoom is different, but if you have a lecture, 50 people in a room, 100 people, very often there's someone who immediately, gets up and is like a co-lecturer, knows everything better and so on and so on. Then this person to control in a large audience is difficult. So if they ask a strange question, you can always say, okay, after lecture, maybe you can come to me and we discuss that. In 99%, they don't come. You have maybe, for example, let's say mother-in-law, which is very difficult, and say, okay, here I have now a trip to the Black Sea, and I want to take you with me. 3 days, only you and me together. And you know that you and her together by train in the same hotel, and these for 3 days, one person will not survive this, at the end of the day. Good. But in a large audience, maybe in a large family meeting with 30 people, she's also there and it's not a problem. So that's one of the things we have to see. Sometimes with some psychovampires, it's easier to be in a direct contact. Some people it's easier to hold in the group. At the end, dear friends, I want to say a few words about this question. Am I maybe a psychovampire for others? I think this is a very important question. And if everybody would ask himself, start with the politicians and add with marriage, with people in partnerships, the world would really look different. So the first question is, sorry. It's here. Would they describe me as a psychovampire? So if someone would put a list together of psychovampire, would they put me on my list on their list or not? I think that's a very important question. The next one is someone allowed to say me this? Do I have people in my life who are not afraid of telling me, Hamid, you are a psychovampire? If you have children who are around 15 or 16, they might tell you. But before and after that, never, usually nobody will tell you. If the partner tells it, then it's usually the end of that. So do you have some people, maybe 1, 2, or 3 in your life who can tell you really you are difficult? Because the question is here, how is it to be married with me? How is it to be my employer? How is it to be my co-worker? How is it to be my neighbor? How is it to be my father, my daughter, and this? So we have to put ourselves in the situation of someone else and to see how is it to deal every day with me. So when I come home and they ask, okay, how are you? I say, don't ask. It was as bad as always. If for 40 years I always say that every evening, I mean, I'm taking the energy away of the other people. So I think this is a very important question. Do other people perceive me as a psychovampire? Can they tell me that? And the last one, do people feel emotionally not safe? Sorry, feel emotionally safe? Not so why safe? Safe in my presence, or are they afraid of me? You know, a boss comes and say everybody can say his opinion, but nobody says something because everybody's afraid. So can people tell me that? And dear friends, a very unique human ability, which we have for, I don't know, how many years now, 40,000 years, 100,000 years, depending on where you see. And it's the idea of self-reflection. We are the only being which can reflect about itself. Yeah. And self-reflection is really a tool for preventing to become a psychovampire. So if I really think, how is it to live with me, and so on and so on, then I think this is something very, very useful. And at least once a year, maybe we should sit down and think really, how is it with that then? Or other things I have to change for other people. Because some people love it to be difficult for other people. Oh, that's for you a possibility to grow. But let me please decide myself whom I want to grow or not. So friends, and now we have a few minutes still for your discussion and questions. I think it's important not to give up. And I'm mentioning this for that reason, because to get rid of a psychovampire can take sometimes 5 years. It's not something you will do tonight. Because as I mentioned, the psychovampire is in your own surrounding. But it's worth, because then I get from a remote controlled life to a self-determined life. So I say, okay, now again, my life is in my own hand. Life is in own hand. So therefore we have first to identify the psychovampires, to see what is the mechanism, why they have so much power. Then I have to try to solve this conflict for myself so that not in future someone will push again. And then I have to contact the psychovampire and to see, can we find some kind of arrangement or not? If not, then I have to decide, unfortunately, that's it, finita la musica. Yeah, because I've said my life is for me too important than to sacrifice it for the other person. Yeah. Or can I find a new level of relationship with the other person? So these were just a few ideas, and I hope it's a little bit useful for you to deal in difficult situations with that. Let me mention that we have this Psychovampire book is in different languages, and thanks to Gabi also, we have it in Romanian language. And now maybe you have some questions and we can get to that.
Hamid, before starting with the discussion and the questions, I would like to thanks to all of our friends who watch the Facebook live streaming, because I'm going to stop that part just to remain with our friends from the summer school. So thank you very much for those who were with us on Facebook, and hope to see you again for Romanian listener, and not only for them, because I've seen colleagues from Poland and from Russia watching the live streaming.